What is an American kulak? Isaac Simpson is founder and chief of Will, the agency. He recently explained this term and what it means for the MAGA crowd.
So in the Soviet era, the communists really hated this group called the kulaks, which was this like entrepreneurial middle class. And they put them in gulags, they took all their property away. And I think there's a lot of parallels to the MAGA movement in the sense that the MAGA people, they're not black, they're not white, they're not any one religion, they're not any one race, but the thing they have in common is they're kind of American kulaks. They're entrepreneurial, they're self-starters, they've got hustle.
Well, Isaac makes his return to the show. He's here to break it all down for us. So thanks once again for the time, Isaac. So how are the MAGA people similar to the Soviet era kulaks?
Yeah, so what happened during that era was when the communists rose after the Russian Revolution, they decided that their number one enemy is what you would call the entrepreneurial class of Russia, which were called the kulaks. And these were peasants who had figured out a way to make their own way. They'd figured out how to get their own land, make their own businesses, create their own wealth. And the rise of the communists saw them become sort of the number one class enemy of the main party. And ultimately, the kulaks were sent to gulags and had their land taken. And that was all because they were a threat to the sort of managerial singularity of the state, of the solo communist state. And so I think, who is Trump? Trump is a businessman, first and foremost. And I think going to AmFest and having gone to some of his rallies, if I could say that there's any one thing that unifies his followers, it's people who are self-starting. They're hustlers. They're not in a negative connotation, but in a good connotation. They're American in the sense that they are people who want to build their own dreams. They want to build their own businesses, their own lives, their own works in the way that they see fit. And I think that Trump really resonates with that group of people, which is sort of distinctly American. And the parallel I'm drawing is just between sort of the resentment of that group of self-starting people, both today and in the communist era.
Yeah, and I mean, this was so apparent during the Biden administration. No, I mean, during that time, they just went after this group of people. They wanted to destroy every upper middle class neighborhood. I mean, these insane policies to actually just come in wherever you were in small town or medium-sized city America and go after this class of people. But this article, we should say, or this conversation really all comes from an article in a publication called Frontier that Blaze Media puts out that we've been working proudly at for a while and Isaac's has been writing for. And he was sent to AmFest, Charlie Kirk's conference. We all were. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know Jill and I were there. Isaac was there, though, doing some poking around and some research on, what this new right thing looks like, because this was right after Trump won. So, going from that conference on, in your experiences since being there, what do you think the mood is now? I mean, because obviously Trump is in place. And, how are things going to go for the American kulaks now, and what are they thinking and feeling?
Well, they're going from a situation in which they're sort of the heckler vote. They're kind of the people who are articulating complaints with the establishment. And it's funny because both the communists and the American kulaks are red, meaning that color tends to symbolize the party that is not in power, but is criticizing the party that is in power. And actually, if you look at the conservative movement in America, it used to be blue and then it became red the less power it got over time, which is a big theme of this article that you're talking about. So put very simply, I think that the MAGA movement was in its red period, but now it's purple shifting to being more blue. And that's symbolically saying that it's learning how to go from the rebel who's critiquing the state, critiquing the authority, to the authority. And that's always going to be a difficult transition to go, okay, well, these were the sorts of things that we were unhappy about. Now that we're in the driver's seat, what are we going to do to make the world in the way that we want to see it? What are the changes that we're going to make? And so I think it's about that group finding the story that it's going to tell as an authority, not necessarily as an outsider.
Well, isn't it ironic that under the Biden administration, the phrase that was used was "build back better," and yet they were tearing down things left and right and not actually building anything. So how do you see that change now under the Trump administration? And just the fact that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance articulated this very well on the campaign trail as well, just the American dream is alive once again. It's okay to have a positive outlook for America.
That's really the perfect follow-up question and really good question. And I think that, yeah, you're totally right. It's like build back better. What were they building? They weren't building anything. They were, tearing everything down. But what was the story that the left told so well for so long? I think they were in power for so long because they told this story about individual freedom. Everything came back to you being able to do whatever you want. And that was the positive story, the positive theme that they just hammered all over and over and over again. Well, what business is it of yours if this person wants to make this decision for themselves? And that the reason that story worked is because it's compelling. People all can relate to that story. So now it comes to what's our story going to be? What's the positive story going to be? And I think you just said it perfectly. It's not necessarily you as an individual are free to do whatever you want. It's that you are free to build whatever you want. We are now free to build again, to create things, to create businesses, to create organizations, to go to the stars, to build enterprise and associate with each other in the way that we see fit. So if before it was about individual freedom, I think our story is about the freedom to build something together, which is really, in my opinion, what America is more about even than individual freedom, because it's about building your religious community. It's about building your business. There's a great Calvin Coolidge quote that the business of America is business. I think that if we really look at what makes us extraordinary as a people, who are our most famous figures? They're rarely philosophers. They're moguls. They're entrepreneurs. They're Steve Jobs, Disney. We have, Henry Ford. This great American history is filled with entrepreneurs. And I think that that's really who we are as a people. And I think that in telling our story, the positive thing we want to keep coming back to is freedom to build, freedom to create.
And that just is the theme of Frontier, the magazine, which everyone should buy. But it really is about, finding that frontier again after, being worried about the gulag basically for a while. And now all of a sudden it's where are, these free spaces and what should we build there? So this is something you and I have talked about and done in different ways. And you spend a lot of time in the media space. So let's apply that, like what we're talking about, to the media space now, because you see every day, mainstream media of all kinds, not just news, I'm talking about the whole thing, really struggling in some serious ways. And you see the opportunity for something new. But I don't see the new thing fully conquering Disney yet. Is that fair? And how do we get there?
How do we create a media ecosystem that is going to defeat the incumbents? Yeah.
So in other words, we are it's a time to build. It's time to, especially what conservatives love to talk about anyways, building media. Yet, to really do that, you need Walt Disney, right? I mean, you need, and so where is this on the right? Where are the bright spots of people building, particularly in media, since that's the space you're in?
Yeah, well, it's a very, very good question. I wish that there was a easy answer. I mean, of course, what you guys are doing at the Blaze with Frontier is absolutely incredible. I think that leaning into culture is important, which you guys are doing very well with Frontier. Yeah, I think one glimmer is not to talk about a competitor, but what Barry Weiss has done with Free Press. I mean, that is a Substack blog effectively that's now worth $100 million. So she's shown that at least you can get the valuation up in that way. Also, I would say that what places like Anduril have done, they are not just a company, right? They're building weapons and things for the government, but they've also become basically a media company. And their advertising, all their advertisements aren't just about their company, they're about building in America. Andreessen's fund, American Dynamism, they're releasing these videos that are really inspiring views of how to build in America. It's time to build again. Also, Founders Fund, Peter Thiel's thing, they have a great video out there that's kind of a inspiring rallying call for American industry again. My agency we actually have a couple of these videos coming out. We just had a video for University of Austin, which is a really interesting experiment in getting away from all the horrible tactics of mainstream higher education, and it's really focusing on giving young people the chance to build away from not building their identity, right? Not building their victimhood narrative, but building actually something. So I think that I'm seeing the most exciting stuff coming from the propaganda efforts of the private sector. And actually, my first piece in Frontier was about El Segundo, and those guys are very much an example of this new generation of American builders. And I think that we can look to them to see how this narrative is being told.
Well, everybody go out there and build something and then let us know when you do. We're so excited just to see what is actually going to come forward in the next 3 or 4 years, because it is a time for everybody to just go through and actually build something that is actually a little bit better than anything that they had under the Biden administration.